Yesterday, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal squared off in the Madrid final, and Rafa came out on top, avenging last year's defeat at the hands of Federer. Now, the score of this match, of course, was 4-6. It was a close match, an interesting match, but kind of a strange match as well. Now, the match was real close because Rafa only won one more point than Federer. Now, Rafa, of course, won basically all the big points. Federer really struggled to convert break points. He missed a lot of service returns, and he obviously made a bunch of errors in the second set breaker to let Rafa back in that a little bit. Now, the match was a little bizarre because, particularly for this stat, Rafa only won 54% of his first serve points, but he won 63% of his second serve points. And this kind of ratio where you're winning more second serve points than first serve points is basically unheard of at the Pro Tour. I can't think of another match where you had a situation like this. So that was a little bizarre from my perspective. And you might be able to say, well, Rafa hits the first serve a little bit harder. Second serve has more spin, higher trajectory, and that ball is going to get high up on Fed's one-handed backhand. That might be somewhat of a plausible explanation, but my view is more so that this is just sort of a statistical aberration. You're not going to see this basically ever. It's just very, very bizarre. Now, the match I thought was real interesting because it was both Rafa and Federer were being extremely, extremely aggressive in terms of running around their backhands to hit a forehand. Now, that's not entirely surprising from Federer's standpoint because we know that Federer's backhand struggles a little bit against Rafa's forehand. Rafa's got a clear advantage on the forehand to backhand exchange. Remember, these players, this is the side of the body that they're hitting on. So this is a forehand for Rafa. This is a backhand for Fed, and of course it's reversed forehand Fed, backhand Rafa. But both players essentially were trying to control almost the entire court with their forehand. So over here would be a forehand for Fed. Over here is a forehand for Rafa. And Fed in particular, well, actually both players were essentially just running around every single shot they could and trying to get their forehand to the opponent's backhand. Now, earlier in the match, you had Federer standing several steps behind the baseline. And I think what Fed was trying to do was give himself a little bit more time to move around a backhand and hit a forehand. So Rafa would hook one of his forehands cross court, and by standing further back, I think Federer was saying to himself, well, I'm going to give myself a little bit more time to get around this shot. But that wasn't super effective because Rafa did a nice job of angling the ball sufficiently so that Federer still struggled to get around the ball, and if he did get around it, now his position was pretty bad. So one of the adjustments Fed made in the second set was to stand in. He got closer to the baseline, and he was hitting a couple more backhands because of that, and he was really stepping into them. I mean, he was trying to catch them on the rise. He was jumping even on some of them to control his contact height. But by doing that, it was harder for Rafa to exploit Fed's lateral court positioning. So, in other words, instead of being further back and further off the court, Fed was up a little bit, and he obviously had to execute and might have had a little bit more time, a harder time rather, handling Rafa's topspin. But because he played up, he didn't get pulled as far off the court, so he wasn't getting run around quite as much in the second set. Of course, that set was closer. I actually thought Federer played a better second set than Rafa and then just kind of let it get away in the breaker. And the other thing about Rafa is, I thought, let's take a step back and let's talk about the Madrid final from last year, because while both players have been using the same strategy in the sense of they're trying to run around the backhand, control most of the court with the forehand, I thought last year what you got was some exchanges backhand to backhand, and Fed was typically the aggressor in that sense, or in the sense that he would either crack a backhand cross court if he could step into the court, or he would run around and then crack a forehand into the open court. But Rafa was much more willing to take that same strategy this time around, because Rafa probably, what my view on that was, Rafa saying to himself, well, Fed's going to be looking to move around these down the line backhands, and this is a tactic I've been employing in the past. So Fed is going to be maybe cheating over, maybe anticipating the down the line shot, trying to exploit the backhand. So what I'm going to do is selectively and appropriately hit to the open court, and you saw Rafa do that real well. He did it on both the backhand side, flattened out the backhand, and when he ran around, he wasn't afraid to play to Fed's forehand, because he knew if he had the right shot selection and chose the right opportunities, Fed was going to be on the run for those balls. And if Fed wasn't able to get the ball sufficiently cross court, then Rafa is going to have a shot in the middle of the court on the forehand, and now he's totally in control totally in control of the point. If he gets a ball here, Federer's over there. He has the entire backhand side to work with, establish a cross-court forehand to backhand rally, and now he's in total control of those points. He's going to win virtually all of those. So that was a real nice strategy that Rafa implemented effectively. And in situations where Federer was able to take the initiative either with the backhand or the forehand and go cross-court, Rafa did a real nice job of hitting some running forehands down the line for winners. Low percentage shot, but he got enough of them in that Federer had to say to himself, well, I'm going to have to hit a good shot cross-court and keep the pressure on this guy if I'm going to win these points. So Rafa did a real nice job in terms of the shot selection. He came up with big shots when he needed to, but I thought it was a really sound strategy given what Federer was trying to do to him. So the French Open is less than a week away, and I think given Rafa's track record, 3 straight titles during this clay court season, you got to pick Rafa to win the French Open, get his 5th French Open crown, and I think he's going to beat Federer to do it. Now, over the course of the French Open, FYB is going to be doing a lot of coverage. We'll be doing preview videos like we did for the Australian Open, and we're also going to be doing daily live webcasts about 30 minutes long where we're going to talk about the day's marquee matches, talk about upcoming matches, and so on. Again, that's all going to be live. There'll be a chat box so y'all can interact with us. So I'll have more details on that later this week, but it should be a lot of fun. I will say that if you have suggestions for what we should do during coverage, please post in the comments below. Let us know what you want to see, format structure, and so on. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it, so I will talk to you all soon.